On today's show, we're going to continue the conversation around the soon-to-be hire of Adrian Griffin as the next head coach of the Milwaukee Bucks. But today we want to focus on the former player element of Adrian Griffin as a head coach for this team and what that might mean for the relationship with Giannis moving forward. Also, I'm fascinated about the way this has been reported and the way the search has been reported. So I want to have a conversation about that today as well. There's so much to talk about the hiring of Adrian Griffin, so let's get into it.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Bucks. My name's Kane Pittman. You can see and hear me on this show Monday to Friday, and also find my work over at ESPN for today's episode that is brought to you by Prize Picks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com. Use the promo code Locked On there. As always, we thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first watch or first listen of every single weekday, specifically through the off season when you have days like we have had or a 24-hour period like we have on this show. Certainly right across the border, a wide range of reactions from Bucks fans, which is exactly what you expect when you have a situation like Milwaukee has been in. So I want to touch on some of the comments that I've seen and some of the reactions and give some of my thoughts now that certainly there's been 24 hours since this news was first announced. So I'm recording this podcast around 3:30 Eastern on Sunday afternoon. So if anything happens after this, that's the time code. But we appreciate the support. Drop a comment, a like, subscribe, review, and give us your thoughts and advice about the show and how we can continue to make it better, and give us topics to talk about as we continue to move forward. We appreciate it. It's free to do so. As far as Adrian Griffin goes, though, and anyone that's listened to this podcast for a long time totally understands that I am, for the most part, an optimist. And I think yesterday, as we worked through the journey to get to Adrian Griffin as the head coach of the Milwaukee Bucks, I think I tried to put at least a little bit of a positive slant on it, because I think that there are reasons for optimism about this hire. As we were talking through all the candidates, and I don't think that the Bucks can be accused of not going through a thorough process. Now, maybe there were some names in the mix that, I don't know, maybe they thought that other names were going to be available. I'm mostly talking about Tyronn Lue in terms of the Clippers and what was going on there. But they interviewed and spoke to over a dozen candidates over a 3-week period. So this was not a rushed process. I see some comments that maybe they parted ways with Bud and didn't really have a plan. I think that it was smart to be thorough about this search. I think it was smart to talk to a whole wide range of people, even if there were some names that you didn't think were going to be in the mix. I also obviously think that it was smart to include Giannis as much as possible in this decision, to at least gauge the relationship with a new head coach, because the Bucks are in a fascinating position as a franchise. So, completely from the outside, I feel pretty satisfied that the Bucks did their due diligence when it comes to this hire. But as we continue to discuss on this show, I don't know what Adrian Griffin's going to be like as a head coach. And I think that there is a risk when you bring in someone that is a little bit more uncertain in terms of not having the head coach experience in the NBA. They could have gone with a Monty Williams, and I would have felt very, very comfortable that this was a team that was going to probably win 50-plus games, be one of the top seeds in the East, and give themselves a shot in the postseason. And when you just bring in someone that hasn't been a head coach before, I saw someone comment yesterday that this team isn't going to be judged, or we won't know anything about this team until the postseason. I think that's generally correct, and I think that would have been correct if Bud stayed on. It would have been correct if Monty Williams came in, or one of these experienced coaches. But I think when you do bring in Adrian Griffin, the scary part, if you're a Bucks fan, is if this doesn't work out, you're probably going to find out before the postseason. I don't think it's that safe hire where you pretty much know exactly what you're going to get. You can go from Bud to another experienced coach and just keep on plowing on. It's going to be different, and I think that there's going to be change, and that's reason for a little bit of concern if you're a Bucks fan. But I like to say it's also reason for a bit of excitement, because the Bucks have taken a little bit of a risk here. I also think if you look at the history of Adrian Griffin as a coach, this is a little bit different to your standard assistant coach that might come in. And I know we referenced Joe Mazzulla yesterday. Now, the Celtics might make the NBA Finals, by the way, in his first year as a head coach, but that's a little bit different. He's super young, hasn't had a lot of experience as an assistant in the NBA. He wasn't even on the front row of the bench with the Boston Celtics, so he was really thrust into a role that again, I don't know, but you can make your judgments whether you think he was ready for that. They might make the finals. He might be a title-winning coach, and then things will change, I imagine, in terms of the way people are talking about Joe Mazzulla. But for Adrian Griffin, it's different. 15 years as an assistant coach, a lead assistant under Nick Nurse, who, it's fascinating that Nurse was in the mix. His assistant ends up getting the job. We'll get into some of the personality stuff and the relationship stuff with Giannis, and maybe that was a factor, and who knows whether there's any reporting around that is going to come out in future weeks or months. But the point being that Griffin has been around winning teams. He's been around basketball minds that are perceived to be near the top of the list in terms of innovators, in-game managers, improvisers, all those things that I think Bucks fans are excited for as a head coach. So if Adrian Griffin had designs on being a head coach in the NBA, it would be hard to sit back here right now and say that he wouldn't be ready. Because if he's not ready now, he's never going to be ready. 15 years, again, with multiple different franchises, different experiences, winning teams, losing teams, including teams in Milwaukee that were on the treadmill a little bit. So he's seen it all. And then as a former player, I think is fascinating as well. So I don't think that I can sit back here and say that you should automatically assume that the Bucks have gone for a hire that is not ready for the job. I don't see that. I think that he'll be ready. Clearly, when you make a hire like this with someone that hasn't been there before, if it doesn't work out, then there's going to be questions asked. The criticism will come quickly. And the question will be, why didn't you hire one of the more experienced coaches and go down a safe route? Because we understand that the situation that the Bucks are in as a franchise, a little bit of jeopardy in terms of the Giannis contract, the age of the roster, and the lack of flexibility. So there's no doubt that there's risk about this hire. But on the surface, I think if you take everything into account, where he's been, what he's done, and the things you read about him being excellent leader, not afraid to put his foot down and get what he needs, worked with developing talent, including Jimmy Butler back in Chicago, and you package all that together, plus the relationship stuff with Giannis that we're going to get to, I think that there are enough boxes ticked from the complete outside to say, okay, I can see why, if you're a Bucks fan, you have some optimism about this hire. And that's certainly the path I'm going to go down until we find out later this year when the Bucks get stuck into the regular season. So let us know what you think about those thoughts in particular, because again, might be an untried coach, but it's certainly not an inexperienced coach. This is a man that has seen a hell of a lot on his NBA trails. All right, I want to get to the Giannis relationship with Adrian Griffin next, and just the way that this story has come out, because I'm seeing some interesting comments from Bucks fans in terms of what this means for Giannis if this coaching decision doesn't work out. And I'm fascinated by that as a conversation. But first, we want to talk about our friends over at Prize Picks. They've got a great deal going on for the NBA playoffs and the finals coming up here later this week. Every day of the NBA playoffs or finals, one Prize Picks user will win a chance at becoming a millionaire. One entry placed after 8 a.m. Eastern will be randomly selected each day. Whoever placed that entry will be given a 6-pick flex with the following payout. 6 correct picks, $1 million. 5 correct picks, you'll still get $80K. 4 correct picks, $16K. Full details can be found at prizepicks.com/million. You must opt in at that link to be eligible for the $1 million entry. And once you opt in, all you have to do is play the game like normal, and you could be the lucky winner. Prize Picks, long time friends of this podcast. But download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. If you deposit 100, Prize Picks will give you 100. If you deposit 50, they'll give you 50. Don't forget to enter the promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. That's at Prize Picks, and a big Game 7 coming up on Monday night. Perhaps you want to get involved in the fun there. All right, I mentioned off the top, we appreciate all the support for Locked On Bucks during this time. I'm all over the place. As soon as I finish recording this podcast, I'm jumping in the car, driving from Bristol to Boston. Game 7 tomorrow. I'm going early. I'm going to be in the building for that. And then I'm covering the NBA Finals. So there will be a little bit of a schedule change for the podcast. It's going to continue running, but perhaps some of you will be happy about this. Let's be honest. There's going to be a little bit less of me over the next few weeks. Camille, Justin, Frank, and probably some new faces are going to really help me out over the next few weeks when I've got a lot going on with my other job. But we're going to keep the podcast rolling and start to move into the free agency stuff and the player personnel decisions that the Bucks have to get into. So we appreciate the support. Please enjoy a break from me because you've all been putting up with me for 4 years straight now, and I'm sure you're looking forward to getting rid of me and having a bit of a break. But the good news is, at the end of the NBA Finals, my plan is to roll through Milwaukee. We're trying to do a live show. We hope if you're in Milwaukee and you're in the local area, you can come and see us all, say hello, have a beer with me perhaps, and Frank and Justin, and talk some Bucks basketball. And that will be right on the eve of free agency. We may have some news on Middleton, Lopez, all those types of things. So we've got some really cool things coming up with the show. We appreciate the support. Continue to comment and let us know what you want us to talk about on this show because we really appreciate it. So another thing that we really appreciate is Giannis. Let's be honest. And with 2 years left on his deal guaranteed, plus a $52 million player option for 25-26, it's not absolute critical stages right now, but it's going to be fascinating over the next few years. We discussed the idea that Giannis can extend this summer. I don't see why he would. New coach, feel it out. The Bucks are going to have to make decisions with this aging roster over the next couple of off seasons. So I think the pressure is going to come obviously next off season, whether he extends a year early, kind of like he did when he signed the Supermax. So I'm not getting too caught up on what could happen contractually for Giannis this summer because I'm not expecting it. But I am fascinated about this relationship with Adrian Griffin and, of course, Giannis. There was a story at the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. Jim Olszewski wrote this story just about the idea of Giannis maybe having a closer bond, not necessarily just as a coach and superstar. This is what you do on the basketball floor. And then maybe they don't connect as well away from the floor. I think that's important. I think it's important to have some things in common with a head coach, so you can talk about other things than basketball. And I don't know what the relationship was with Mike Budenholzer. They obviously had a lot of success together. But I think that it was the right idea to have Giannis heavily involved in this decision-making process with Adrian Griffin. I have been fascinated to see some of the comments that came through on the YouTube channel. I've seen some stuff on Twitter just around the idea that if Giannis was so heavily involved in this decision-making process for the coach, what happens if it doesn't work out? Now, historically, I would say that there's been some players that have been better and some that have been worse in the decision-making process, whether it's recruiting free agents, recruiting coaches, making or being involved in those heavy and really important basketball decisions. It's been fascinating over the years to hear Giannis, a little bit of recruiting over the years, but most of the time he stepped back. When he got asked about guarding Jimmy Butler a few years ago, not playing enough minutes in the postseason, this year, did he want to guard Jimmy Butler? And he would be open and honest about, yes, I wanted this, I wanted that. And then when he got asked about, did you talk to the coach about it? No, he's the coach. I wouldn't do that. He makes the decisions. And I think that after the fact, if you're a Bucks fan, it's not really what you want to hear. Giannis is the superstar, always super respectful. And that's, I'm not 100% sure our friends over in Europe and certainly Greece will let me know. But, my understanding in terms of the coaching style in Europe, that's very common in terms of the authority that coaches have and the respect from player to coach. It's different to the way it operates in the NBA. So I think that's probably part of the reason why Giannis has been like that. But I think also he's 28, turning 29 later this year. And I'm sure he's at a situation in his career where he would feel some urgency. He wants to win as much as any player in the league. He wants this franchise to be exactly where they need to be. And so I think, maybe if there is a more open conversation in terms of Giannis being a leader, being more vocal about what he wants, and having that that back and forth with a head coach who maybe they have a different type of relationship, it can only be a positive. I've just been fascinated about the way the story has come out in terms of how involved Giannis was, because when our listeners comment and say if this doesn't work out, it's going to be a bad look for Giannis. I mean, to me, ultimately, I don't really buy that, because we understand that where Giannis is with his contract, he has to be involved in the conversation. And if the Bucks weren't consulting Giannis on the decision, then there would be something incredibly and seriously wrong with the way that they've gone about this. So the fact that any new head coach coming in went to Giannis's house and had a sit-down meeting with him, that seems like pretty standard stuff to me. If I'm not a GM, not ever going to be an NBA owner, just a newsflash. But if you aren't doing that, it feels like you're not doing your job properly. So that how heavily it's been emphasized in the reporting is fascinating to me, because ultimately the ownership and the GM, they're the ones that have to take the responsibility if it doesn't work out for a head coach, right? I mean, that's what feels right to me. I don't think in 6 months' time it would be fair to sit down and say, well, this is all on Giannis. This is the guy he wanted. Like that doesn't sit comfortably to me. He should be involved, but ultimately you've got decision makers in charge for the franchise that should take the responsibility. So it's just been fascinating to me how the news story has been reported. And again, we don't know the finer details or the full details of the way that it played out. But I kind of don't really disagree with that. If this doesn't work out, I'm not going to sit back and say, well, this is all on Giannis. That's I might be alone in that, but that's not really the way that I looked at this decision. But if he's going to meet with all these people, and we don't know this, but if he has a greater connection with Adrian Griffin and that turns into greater communication and a higher level of respect for Adrian Griffin to not just let Giannis take over and do whatever the heck he wants, but for there to be genuine communication, ideas, adaptability, and changes to the way that he can potentially be maximized on offense and defense, having that respect between the coach and your star player seems like a perfect way to go about it. But just interesting the way the stories have come out and the reportings, because I think the reaction from some of the Bucks fans makes total sense. I'm just not 100% sure that I agree with it. So let me know how you feel about Giannis, Adrian Griffin, and how heavily involved he was in this process, because to me, it makes a lot of sense. I want to talk about Chris Middleton and the rest of this roster moving forward here next, because it's going to be fascinating. And I think clearly, if the Bucks are having conversations with any new potential head coach, those names would have had to have been a major part of the conversation. I briefly mentioned this on the podcast yesterday, the idea that once the decision was made, or when the decision was going to be made, there was a dinner where a bunch of people were invited. Chris Middleton was invited to this dinner per reports. Obviously, Giannis was there. And, Chris Middleton as a player option, but potential pending free agent, I depending on how people feel about this, and I know he's a polarizing player, and you know that I don't agree with that. It's a no-brainer that the Bucks need to sign Chris Middleton this offseason. But I would have to believe that it's also a no-brainer that Adrian Griffin is coming in here and saying, hey, no, we need to pay Chris Middleton. We can't lose this asset for nothing, our best perimeter player. So, again, whatever happens with the roster moving forward in future years, I'm not 100% sure. But I think it makes sense that Chris Middleton was a part of that, at least announcement, or that had the opportunity to be a part of that. And I think it does signal some intent from the Milwaukee Bucks that they would understand that their best path forward is to sign Chris Middleton, depending on the market and what the money is. But I just expect that the Bucks are going to be able to retain Chris Middleton this year and continue this partnership with Giannis and Chris that's been going on for over a decade. And again, maybe start to see some different ways those two are maximized as a duo on the roster. And, who knows what happens moving forward contractually. I'm sure the same is with Brook Lopez, who is a free agent. And to me, a no-brainer for the Bucks to keep as well. We understood when the Bucks went down this path that if they were going to make a major change this offseason, it was most likely going to be a coach and maybe not this roster. They're going to probably try and go back to the well for one more year. And maybe there's some periphery trades or moves that this team will be able to make. One thing that we didn't really mention a lot over the last podcast yesterday as we announced this. Adrian Griffin, the former Dookie, son of Adrian Griffin. Why don't we bring him on board? Let's bring him on to the Bucks in a year or two. Maybe he wants to play for his dad. That seems like a nice matchup there. So that was certainly the thing that I was first looking at. Only 1 year in the league as a rookie, but played 72 games and 20 minutes per game. I highly doubt that the Atlanta Hawks are looking to move on from AJ Griffin, but it's nice to dream. It's nice to dream. We've got some brothers on the roster. We've always talked about having another Holiday brother on the roster. Let's get the father-son connection. That seems like that would be pretty fun if you're a fan of the Bucks and only 19, about to turn 20 as well, which is exactly in the demographic that I think Bucks fans are excited for. The developmental part of Adrian Griffin is going to be fascinating. I've seen a lot of excitement, and it needs to play young players, needs to do this. I'm still not sure. I think we saw little flashes from Marjon Beauchamp. We've seen him tweet. He's normally pretty vocal, but he's getting better in the offseason and those types of things that make you excited. I'm excited to see what Adrian Griffin can do with someone like Beauchamp. Clearly, for the Bucks, being able to really hit on a pick like that in the 20s and become a rotation player is gold, because they just haven't had a lot of success in the draft in years gone by. Obviously, they don't have much going on in this year's draft at all, so they don't have a lot of avenues to get younger. There's some potential trades out there, and I think that's why around the trade deadline there was excitement, certainly from me, about the idea of Emmanuel Quickly, just as a younger player, to bring some athleticism, some excitement, and some fresh faces that can potentially be a part of the next wave of hopefully when Giannis is still here in Milwaukee. So we'll see how that roster stuff pans out in the future. A lot of love for AJ Green in the comments as well. I'm not sure about the future of AJ Green. He clearly proved himself to be a pretty good shooter, particularly in those sort of catch and shoot situations. Has he got more further growth as an offensive player at the NBA level? I'm not 100% sure, but certainly was impressive as a two-way player to start the season. So there's just some thoughts, and quite honestly, a typical Kane optimistic podcast tonight about Adrian Griffin. But yeah, I understand why there is some concern in some circles. I'm always pretty cautious when it comes to coaches. I think everyone knows that by now. But I think there is enough evidence throughout when you hear and see certainly a lot of happiness for him from players that he's coached, people that he's worked with, people in the media that have worked with him as well. It gives you some confidence there that certainly he's paid his dues undoubtedly and is now ready to go to the next level. So, look, as I said from the top, I think when you go down this route, a coach that hasn't been here before, I think that you can find out pretty quickly if this is going to work out. And there might just be some rough parts through the early part of the season that really the Bucks haven't had to deal with the continuity they've had over the last 5 years of Mike Budenholzer. So it could be a little bit rocky. We'll see. Maybe that's fun. Maybe that's going to be interesting for us to see some new stuff roll out with this Bucks team that, for the most part, has been pretty steady throughout the last little period of the franchise. So, continue to drop your thoughts on Adrian Griffin in the YouTube comments. Hit me up on Twitter at Kane Pittman. And like I said, bit of a change with the schedule and certainly the hosting over the next few weeks on the Locked On Bucks, but we'll continue to roll out shows. We appreciate the support and absolutely across this weekend, a big weekend for the franchise of the Milwaukee Bucks. So that's another solo pod in the books. Thanks for sticking with me. Thanks for putting up with me. We'll see you next time.